Before we get into the 10 stocks that you've asked us to have a look at, I've been having a bit of fun last week and this week, posing a question to each of our experts on the panel. If you could pick one stock that could potentially change your life financially, what would it be? It's a bit different and comes with all the caveats that some of the suggestions are at the higher risk end of the scale, but a stock that over 5 or 10 years could really shoot the lights out, what would it be? And it's got everyone thinking. And Gary Glover, what have you chosen for a stock that could change your life?
Yeah, I've actually tried to reverse engineer this, David. So, because really, if you look at the numbers, only 20% of IPOs will gain 100% in the first 12 months, and only 10% of new IPOs will go 10 times within 10 years. So really, we're asking people to hang on to stocks for 10 years to get that 10 bagger. So not sure many of us, probably Howard might be the outlier here. He probably has had a few stocks for 10 years, but most of us don't hold stocks for that long. And only in 10 years, only 51% will achieve 100% gain. So some pretty interesting stats there just to think about this concept alone there. If we go back and if we look at who's the greatest sort of stock pickers of all time there, so the growth stocks, probably William O'Neill, who wrote How to Make Money in Stocks, and I think John Boyk, who wrote Monster Stocks, they talk about this concept of picking these big winners there. And one of the big principles they look at is the can slim. So people, that's the sort of the... So I've sort of tried to work backwards here. I've looked at what sort of ingredients are present in the big winners historically, and try to see if I could find one that had some of these or a few of these ingredients. So
wow, I love the way you're thinking.
Yep. So I've come up with Playside Studios, which is PLY is the code. I honestly don't know a heap about the stock. What I do know is that it develops video games in Australia, which meets one of our criteria, is that to be a new product service or something like a new catalyst. So it's a new business there. They also collaborate with Disney, Pixar, Warner Brothers, Nickelodeon. So they basically collaborate with the big names sort of in that industry. So they're basically got leadership position in their sector. So if any of the sort of movie players want to sort of get a game produced, they go to Playside Studios. The other thing too we're looking for is one of the S in Can Slim is supply and demand, and this is really sort of interesting ingredient here, is that we want to see not too much supply here. And the beauty with Playside is that 71% of the stock is held by insiders. So there's not much stock around to get here. So these are one of the ingredients that is sort of common in these 10 baggers, is that there's usually not a lot of stock to get. So meets kind of 3 of our criteria. They were looking for like positive trend. We're looking for sort of earnings there. So look, the revenue line has grown 63% in the first year, but there's not too much earnings here yet because they've sort of spent money on the float. So 73 mil market cap, raised 15 in the float, only been going for sort of 6 months, so very early. But this is sort of one of those companies, if it can get some earnings here in the next 1 or 2 years, this has got the potential to meet, tick a lot of the boxes that would normally come in these 10 bagger sort of stocks here. So risky, we've only got really maybe a 10% chance here of getting that 10 bagger. That's the odds. But this kind of ticks about 5 of my sort of 7 boxes that we normally want to tick, and it's got potential to maybe get the other 2 in the next 1 or 2 years if things go to plan.
Oh, well, thank you for doing all the work in that. That's fascinating to explain the process going through it and taking some learnings from some of the great investors of what they've looked at and some of the history behind these life-changing stocks. So that's a great one to have. Howard, what have you chosen?
Yeah, similarly to Gary, I looked at the history, and in Teamninvest, we identify what we call wealth winners. Now, wealth winners are companies that, for the reasons of their metrics and their past results over time, we very confident will roughly multiply the returns for you by at least 6 times over the 10 years. In other words, 20% per annum, which is 6 times over 10 years. Now, a few of those go even further, and they become at least 10 times over 10 years. And that's what we describe as wealth winners. And the whole essence of Teamninvest is picking wealth winners. So all our members spend most of their time, our software starts off by doing most of the hard grunt and getting rid of about 2,000 of the 2,200 companies on the ASX that won't be wealth winners or that are extremely unlikely to be wealth winners, where your chances are so tiny that they could be wealth winners that you wouldn't want to worry about them. And then we look at the others. Now, I then looked backwards and said, within my own portfolio, which are the wealth winners that I've had based on that process? And we've been running Teamninvest now for just under 14 years. It'll be 14 years in a couple of months' time. And in that 14 years, there are 8 companies that I've owned for longer than 10 years. And in that 10 years, $100,000 would have turned into more than $1 million. So if you'd put in $100,000, you would have made a profit. Sorry, you would have made more than $1 million. So it would have turned into 1.1 million, including dividends. There are a couple of them that you would have made almost 2 million. And of those 8 companies in 14 years, in other words, we've identified about one every 15 or 16 months over that time. There have been others that have made 600,000, but not 1 million. The one that I would pick is CSL. And CSL has turned, in my own portfolio, every $100,000 into more than $1 million in that period of time, and obviously for many of our other members. And if you look at it going forward, the best predictor of future performance is past performance. We know that in sport, we know that in life. Students who do very well in exams all the way through primary school and high school are the most likely to do well in exams at university. Sports teams like the All Blacks, unfortunately, that do best in rugby tend to continue doing best in rugby. Australians tend to do very well in swimming. At the Olympics, we expect them to continue doing well in swimming, and so on. And the top AFL teams, despite the draft and the salary cap, if they've been doing really well, they tend to have good results through a longer time, and the ones who do badly, and that's despite the draft and salary cap. So looking at that, CSL's got a lot of things going for it. Out of every litre of blood plasma that they collect, they're able to make more and more high-value products each year or each few years than they could make a few years before. On top of that, the population in the developed world is aging, which means there's more and more need for all the products that CSL produces. So they've got a combination of two things going for them: more requirement for their products, in other words, greater demand, and more products that they can get out of each litre of blood that they acquire or purchase. So the same as it's been a wealth winner in the past more than a decade, and I've owned it for more than a decade, I can expect it'll be a wealth winner in the next decade. And so my pick would most definitely be CSL. But if you want to continue this for a number of periods, David, I've got 7 others that I've identified so that we could have over a period of time.
Oh, perfect. All right, we might come back to you on that and pick it out. But that's great too. Really good suggestions there, and appreciate you both putting the work into it.